Hey all, here at Book Talk Reviews. You're watching our video review of Don Quixote by Cervantes. This is a Spanish text originally published in 1605 and 1615, but since then it's been translated to various languages around the world. Now, Don Quixote actually is famous because it is a bit of a parody of Spain at the time. And when this was first published, Cervantes wrote this story because he intended it to be a satire. He intended it to be funny. Because at the time there were things like the Inquisition going on, and also the idea that people could buy or the rich could buy kind of their way out of sins just by paying the church. And so there's a lot of these different elements that were kind of ridiculous, and Cervantes wanted to have the social commentary, and so he formulated it in the form of a humorous text that was divided into 2 volumes. The first thing I will say is that the book itself is actually quite long. It's funny, yeah, it definitely allows you to read at a pretty fast pace, but it's not the fastest read in the world. So before you read the book, you definitely need a bit of a large chunk of time, so make sure you have that when you're actually reading it, and it's quite dense in terms of language. Otherwise, I like the setting, I like the actual descriptions, and how each part of the story is kind of a new twist. It's really unexpected. Essentially, the story is about the titular protagonist, which is Don Quixote, and he's this old man who's read too many books about chivalry and knights, and he decides that he has to be this knight, and he leaves his house, he leaves his family, really without saying much, and he also invites his neighbor, Sancho Panza, and together they embark on this journey to fight off giants, and to become knights to save princesses, which don't really exist except in their own minds. And they see windmills and they think that they're giants. They see sheep and they think that they're dangerous, or they're an army. And so there are elements of both cruelty and also humor in it, and it gets slightly repetitive kind of halfway through it, but Cervantes still does a pretty good job of shaking things up. For example, he puts in one particular chapter that, oh, the rest of the story has been lost, and so this is a version that I picked up from a market. And so it's an interesting twist that has a lot of these different viewpoints. It's very clever, it's very funny, and the descriptions between the action and description between the humor is nicely done. So it's really nicely paced, and it's a reason why it's kind of considered a classic, I would say. The end, yeah, it's a little bit, I'm not going to go too much into it to avoid any spoilers, but personally I thought, I was a bit, I didn't love the ending, didn't hate the ending, but I understand that it's a parody, and that it has a purpose in terms of the history at the time, especially. But even if they standards, it feels like a more humorous versions of perhaps Three Kingdoms in Chinese that's also been translated. But it has this interesting twist on chivalry and whether or not it's dead or not, how society works, and how humans react to these different situations. It's just interesting. It has a lot of different psychological aspects to it as well. So I would definitely say it's worth your time if you're interested in looking at something that's funny, has a bit of action going on as well, and you have a bit more time to read something. I would go for it. I would rate this book about 3.8 stars out of 5 stars, which is pretty good, and you can check out our full review on our website. Thanks for watching here at Book Talk Reviews.